And let's start with Ivanka, Trump's only daughter, except for, and yet somehow including, Tiffany. Now, Ivanka is reassuringly familiar because she's been part of the Trump brand since she was a child. She even co-hosted Trump's Miss Teen USA pageant at age 15, featuring this noticeably odd moment.
Let's go back to Ivanka.
Thanks, Eddie. I can guarantee my brothers were loving that. Are any of you up there single?
Oh, God. Why did they have her say that? Yes, Eddie, my blood relatives are rock hard right now. You heard me, the men with whom I share parents probably have erect penises at this very moment. But in the public drama of the Trump family, Ivanka has been cast as the calm, reasonable, indoor-voiced one, a dynamic that's perhaps best exemplified by this moment.
What's the favorite thing you have in common with your father?
Either real estate or golf.
Donald, with your daughter?
Well, I was going to say sex, but I can't relate that part.
What is wrong with you, you colossal fucking creep? You found the only possible wrong answer to that question. What's your favourite colour? Hitler. But still, that clip actually illustrates a lot of what we like about Ivanka. She's the exact opposite of her dad. He's crazy, she's poised and restrained. And she is impressively on message at all times. Just think about how little information she gave you in that exchange. She was asked, "What do you have in common with your dad?" And she said, "Real estate and golf." Those are not personal details. They are core components of the Trump brand that any stranger would associate with him. So, I mean, if you asked Huey, Dewey and Louie what they had in common with their Uncle Donald and they said either feathers or no pants, you would think, wow, the Duck family really doesn't spend a lot of quality time together. And that ability to apparently say nothing and yet consistently support her dad can actually apply to her political views as well. Because the assumption that many of us have that she disagrees with him isn't actually based on much. Just watch her response to being questioned about what they specifically disagree on.
My father agrees with me on so many issues, and where he doesn't, he knows where I stand. But it's not my administration.
Can you give us an example of something that you disagree with him on and that you think that by speaking up to him, it made him change his position or soften his position?
I think most of the impact I have over time, most people will not actually know about.
Oh, well, that's convenient. So we should just give her credit when good stuff happens and then blame others when bad stuff happens. That's not a job description of a political advisor. That's a description of an Old Testament God. And that answer there enables you to project whatever you want onto her based on second-hand rumours and assumptions, which is exactly what Gayle King and her co-hosts then did.
What is it they differ on? And where do you think she is?
She is not going to share that information. With me, anyway. She's not sharing that information. But that's between her and her dad.
But what do you think?
I think about climate change, certainly. I think about gay rights. I think some of the immigration ban.
Planned Parenthood.
And certainly Planned Parenthood.
Oh, yes, certainly Planned Parenthood as well. Why not? And, you know, those things all feel true, but there is not a lot of evidence. You know, it's the same way that I assume Johnny Depp's penis also has its own miniature hat and goatee. Now, I don't have any concrete evidence that that is actually the case, but come on. Probably, right? Probably. And when you look at what the Trump administration has been doing, it is hard to see much of Ivanka's influence there. Take Planned Parenthood, which she certainly cares about. Well, last week, Donald Trump allowed states to block funds to it, or maybe take climate change. Ivanka did reportedly bring Al Gore to Trump Tower, but unfortunately, just 3 days later, Trump named climate change denialist Scott Pruitt to head the EPA. And maybe that is an example of Ivanka's moderating influence. Maybe Trump's initial choice was a guy strangling a dolphin with a six-pack ring. Although, just out of interest, let's look at an issue that Ivanka has been very outspoken about. Last year at the RNC, she brought up family leave and childcare. And when the Trump campaign released their plan for that, she sold it hard.
We think we've proposed something that's incredibly comprehensive. It's very innovative. It's a bold and fresh solution. There's no policy on Hillary Clinton's website pertaining to any of these issues, childcare, elder care, or maternity leave, or paternity leave for that matter.
Except none of that was remotely true. Jared Kushner actually speaking out loud following his testimony before a Senate committee.
My name is Jared Kushner. I am senior advisor to President Donald J. Trump. When my father-in-law decided to run for president, I served his campaign the best I could.
I told you that's what his voice sounded like. I told you, and you wouldn't believe me. Now, that happened on Monday. That happened this Monday. And if it feels like that happened a month ago, that's all thanks to President Trump, who seems to be bending the space-time continuum in order to fill a week with more news than it can scientifically contain. And this week may have actually been notable, not just for the terrible things Trump tried to do, but for how terribly he tried to do them. Take what happened on Wednesday morning.
A policy pronouncement from the President of the United States. He just took a major stance saying that he will ban transgender people from serving in the U.S. military.
Look, that is as hateful as it is pointless. But it means that we may already be entering the Mad Libs portion of Trump's presidency, where he just persecutes groups at random. Transgender people banned from the military. Pacific Islanders can no longer use the postal service. And Jews can no longer high-five. Sorry, Jews. And to make this even worse, Trump not only announced this policy over Twitter, but across 3 tweets, the first of which read, "After consultation with my generals and military experts, please be advised that the United States government will not accept or allow." Then there was a 9-minute gap. Presumably, while he finished his breakfast of deep-fried Big Macs and mashed Doritos. And according to one report, even his own generals were concerned about what might be coming next.
It was reported that generals at the Pentagon were nervous for 9 minutes till the second tweet came out because they thought the president might be declaring war on North Korea. That's a pretty scary thought.
A pretty scary thought. No, Donald Trump declaring war on North Korea with a tweet is the scariest 10 consecutive words in the English language. And I'm including on that list, "A clown waits for you in your house softly whistling." And "Sharks can fly now and they know where you live." And as the military soon informed the president, it doesn't take its marching orders from fucking Twitter.
General Joseph Dunford said, quote, "There will be no modification to the current policy until the order goes through the proper channels."
Exactly. The military needs instructions delivered through the proper chain of command. You cannot change policy over the same channels that Justin Bieber once used to tweet, "Random shout out to all my sexy ladies, ha ha." Meanwhile, there was also a development regarding the repeal of Obamacare, which, remember, was a signature goal for Donald Trump's presidency, along with, presumably, passing comprehensive pro-daughter dating legislation and getting to second base with a truck. Well, this week, the repeal ran aground in spectacular fashion.
The GOP drive to repeal Obamacare fell apart at 1:29 a.m. Eastern Time.
Mr. McCain.
When Arizona Senator John McCain flashed a thumbs down, drawing gasps and some applause from Democrats.
Wow, I haven't seen a group of senators break into spontaneous applause like that since every time Ted Cruz leaves a room. Oh, he's going. Fuck that guy. Now, McCain's vote was an incredibly dramatic moment, although CNN could not help trying to amp up the drama even more.
1:29 a.m. Senator McCain re-enters the chamber. Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell stands at the front of the room like he had most of the night. McCain waves his hand to get the attention of the Senate clerk, pauses for just a moment, and gives a dramatic thumbs down. Senator Elizabeth Warren leans in to get a better look and breaks into applause. Senator Dianne Feinstein, a single assertive clap.
Meanwhile, Senator Roy Blunt shakes his fist at the heavens, wondering how an omniscient God could be so cruel, while Senator Claire McCaskill does something that looks like the Macarena, and the ghost of Strom Thurmond carves a racial epithet into a wooden desk using the blunted edge of a mechanical pencil. In any other week, that face would be the least diplomatic thing you had ever seen in your life. But this was also a week when Donald Trump's ambassador to Somalia presented that country's president with a hat reading, "Make Somalia Great Again," and Trump himself took on the fraught Israeli-Palestinian two-state solution in the most casual possible way.
Looking at two-state and one-state And I like the one that both parties like. I'm very happy with the one that both parties like. I can live with either one.
If I may paraphrase the people of Sweden for a second, what the fuck are you talking about? The whole problem is the people on each side who want a one-state solution generally cannot agree on what state it should be. No one's really expecting them to suddenly say, hey, we agreed on one state and it's Peru. Shalom, salam aleikum, welcome to Peru. But that right there is the problem. Here we are talking about Trump again because you cannot avoid him. In the past week alone, Trump designated the media as enemies of the American people, had his EPA-hating nominee for head of the EPA confirmed, lost his nominee for Labour Secretary and his National Security Advisor, and signed a bill undoing Barack Obama's protections for waterways from coal mining waste, a signing that he capped off with this wonderful gesture.
So how about we give the pen, it's a great pen, how about we give that to the miners?
That's perfect. Leave it to Trump to give 7 people 1 pen. He must just expect them all to share it like some kind of brotherhood of the travelling pen. That might be the laziest instance of pen gifting I've ever seen, and I'm very much including every other time someone has given a pen as a gift. Oh, great, an expensive pen. It's different than a regular pen because I get to worry about losing it and no other reasons. But perhaps nothing summed up Trump's week better than his batshit crazy press conference on Thursday, including this amazing exchange with an African-American journalist.
Are you going to include the Congressional Black Caucus and the Congressional
Well,
Hispanic
I would.
Caucus,
I tell you what, do you want to set up the meeting? Do you want to set up the meeting?
No.
Are they friends of yours?
I'm just a reporter.
No, set up the meeting.
Know.
The man is incredible, because what hits you first there is the racism of assuming that all black people are friends. And then it's not until later that you really appreciate the sexism of thinking all women are there to perform secretarial tasks for you. The guy packs so much into so little. In fact, his press conference was so unhinged that many of the reporters covering it had the same initial response.
Wow.
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 Wow?
Yeah, wow.
Yes. Wow, indeed. A presidential press conference elicited the same reaction you get from people who just watch someone shoot fireworks out of his arse. Which, when you think about it, is actually fitting. Because whenever Trump speaks, what is it, essentially, other than just random sparks and flames sputtering noisily out of a damaged arsehole? And now, this.
And now, Fox and Friends is painfully aware of who is watching them.
I know Donald Trump is watching, is up right now, and I imagine watching. So if you want us to check your schedule, see if we have the same one, Mr. President.
All right, Donald Trump watches this show. Tweet us this morning. Let us know what was going on there.
If Donald Trump's watching, tweet us and just say we're going to Mars.
You know, Donald Trump watches his show. And, you know, Donald Trump does watch your show.
Donald Trump watches every day. He's like a groupie.
I know if Donald Trump is watching, he probably hasn't heard about it. And we know that Donald Trump watches the show. So, Donald, it's more than ISIS, Mr. President-elect. For example, Muslim Brotherhood. Donald Trump is watching. He doesn't love when you talk and eat.
Oh, I'll be very elegant then.
I watched this morning a couple of the network, and I have to say, Fox and Friends in the morning, they're very honorable people.
Wow. Welcome to Last Week Tonight. I'm John Oliver. Thank you so much for joining us. And we begin tonight with President Trump. 2 words that continue to sound wrong together, sort of like horse pope or Dr. Oz. And this was a week of diplomacy for the president, or as it turned out, the opposite of that.
President Trump hosting Chancellor Angela Merkel at the White House today. Will be their first face-to-face meeting since Mr. Trump ridiculed the chancellor on the campaign trail, accusing her of, quote, ruining Germany.
Wow. Well, first, that is a major insult, because historically, the title of Chancellor synonymous with ruining Germany is pretty much taken. And second, it's got to be awkward to meet someone that you've talked so much shit about. Personally, that is why I never leave the house, because I know Johnny Depp is somewhere out there, presumably vaping into a supermodel's vagina while he mansplains acting. And if you are thinking that Trump made an extra effort to smooth things over, you would be wrong, because watch what happened when the media at a photo op made a very routine request.
Thank you. Okay.
Oh, shake her hands, you weird, weird man! It is not often that you can genuinely say, Trump really should have touched that woman. Because, look at him. He's just staring straight ahead, refusing to make eye contact. He's treating the Chancellor of Germany like a drunk guy masturbating in a subway car. And it did not get any less tense at their joint press conference, because, as you probably know, Trump has been standing by his nonsensical claim that President Obama had him wiretapped. And when a German reporter asked him about that, he tried to pull Merkel into it with him.
As far as wiretapping, I guess, by, this past administration, at least we have something in common, perhaps.
Now, what that very funny joke is referring to is the allegation that the US had monitored Merkel's phone, and she is not amused by that. In fact, that may be the most uncomfortable a US president has ever made her, and I will remind you, George W. Bush once gave her an unsolicited surprise back rub. We must begin with the events in Charlottesville, Virginia, where one person was killed and 19 injured after a car ploughed into protesters following a rally of white nationalists. It was truly a weekend of horrifying images. We saw Nazi flags and marchers carrying torches, tiki torches, by the way, because nothing says white nationalist quite like faux Polynesian kitsch. And look, a protester being killed in the wake of neo-Nazis marching in the streets of an American city is the kind of tragedy that calls for true leadership from whoever is in the Oval Office. Unfortunately, the current occupant is this guy, and even after a few hours to think about it, the best he could do was squeeze in this response before a bill signing.
We condemn in the strongest possible terms this egregious display of hatred, bigotry, and violence on many sides. On many sides.
Wait, on many sides? This was a white nationalist rally. You have to call that out by name. There honestly aren't many instances in modern American politics where you can honestly think that guy really should have mentioned the Nazis, but this is emphatically one of them. It's like a reverse Godwin's law. If you fail to mention Nazism, you lose the argument. And having made a wild false equivalence between Nazis and people who oppose Nazis, Trump moved on to his favourite subject, himself.
It's been going on for a long time in our country. Not Donald Trump, not Barack Obama. This has been going on for a long, long time.
It seems Trump's first response to anything bad happening is always to immediately absolve himself of any personal responsibility. He's the kind of guy who starts eulogies at funerals saying, "Great guy, I didn't kill him, but he's a great guy and he's dead and I didn't do it." And you know who might take issue with his statement that the white nationalists had nothing to do with Donald Trump? The white nationalists themselves. Because here is David Duke during yesterday's rally.
We are determined to take our country back. We're going to fulfill the promises of Donald Trump. That's what we believed in. That's why we voted for Donald Trump, because he said he's going to take our country back, and that's what we got to do.
I've got to say, David Duke and the Nazis really seem to like Donald Trump, which is weird because Nazis are a lot like cats. If they like you, it's probably because you're feeding them. Also, cats are like Nazis, but that's a whole different subject. And that kind of connection there is something that anyone in their right mind would want to immediately and repeatedly disavow. And it's not like Trump wasn't given the opportunity. Watch what happened at the end of his speech.
Thank you, everybody.
Mr. President, how do you respond to white nationalists who say they're participating in Charlottesville because they support you?
They'd like me to sign the bill here instead of outside, so I think we'll do that. Okay? Thank you.
You know, for a second there, as he came back to the podium, I almost thought, well, maybe he's about to say the right thing. But of course not. He had one last shot before the buzzer on the racism clock hit 0, and he threw an air ball so far away it landed in the Third Reich. And for the record, For the record, even after he signed the bill, he got another chance.
Mr. President, Mr. President, do you want the support of these white nationalist groups who say they support you, Mr. President?
Mr. President,
have you denounced them strongly enough?
A car planning a group of people, would you call that terrorism, sir?
So here is the problem. Here is the problem with that. A non-answer in a moment like this is an answer. If you had asked me, have you ever been aroused by the fairies in Zelda, the Ocarina of Time? And I responded by slowly and silently walking away from you, you would know exactly what I was saying. It simply doesn't get easier than disavowing Nazis. It's as much of a presidential gimme as pardoning a fucking turkey. It is almost impossible to screw it up. But that's exactly what happened. So there is clearly no point waiting for leadership from our president at moments like this, because it is just not coming. Which means we will have to look to one another, because incredibly, in a country where previous presidents have actually had to defeat Nazis, we now have one who cannot even be bothered to fucking condemn them. Trump is basically an insult comic writ large. It is hard to imagine a philanthropic event he'd be better suited for, other than, of course, a charity groping booth. And yet, somehow, he completely lost the room.
Hillary is so corrupt. She got kicked off the Watergate Commission. Here she is tonight, in public, pretending not to hate Catholics. Everyone knows, of course, Hillary's belief that it takes a village, which only makes sense, after all, in places like Haiti, where she's taken a number of them.
How are you blowing this? It's a charity roast. In fact, just watch the face of the man sitting next to him after that first joke. It says something about how horrifying Trump's speech was. That his expression is that of someone who just realised, my God, I've been shot. I've been shot. And the crazy thing is, of all the negative things you could, should, and are morally obligated to say about Trump, being unentertaining is not one of them. He is a born showman, and that room couldn't have given him more of a home field advantage. This wasn't a town hall or a debate. It was a $3,000 a plate fundraising gala at a moth-eaten Manhattan hotel organised by the Catholic Church, a real estate-owning, male-dominated, sex scandal-plagued organisation with whom Trump obviously shares a uniquely unqualified interior decorator. I mean, just look at the audience there. White bow ties. They are dressed like they're about to play a game of steerage darts on board the Titanic. Terribly high-stakes steerage darts. If you're not careful, you could lose a dart. But perhaps there is no better index of just how badly he did than this.
People were really cringing, I think, a lot of times with Donald Trump. I was sitting next to Henry Kissinger, and he said, "This is not good. This is not good."
It's true. Henry Kissinger thought Trump bombed horrifically. And Henry Kissinger is pretty much the world's leading authority on horrific bombings. And yet, despite the audible boos he heard during his speech, Trump somehow did not seem to be aware of how badly he was doing.
Hillary believes that it's vital to deceive the people by having one public policy and a totally different policy in private. That's okay. I don't know who they're angry at, Hillary. You're right.
It's you. They're angry at you, and I'll tell you why. Because you are treating a benefit for needy children like open mic night at Rascal McBigot's, Long Island's fourth best alt-right comedy club. But perhaps the reason that Trump did so poorly is that the Al Smith dinner is supposed to involve a healthy share of self-deprecation, and he is almost pathologically unable to acknowledge any flaw or fault. In fact, there was one revealing moment in Wednesday's debate when Hillary Clinton hit something of a nerve.
There was even a time when he didn't get an Emmy for his TV program 3 years in a row, and he started tweeting that the Emmys were rigged against him.
Should have gotten it.
Of course. Of course. Of course he wants an Emmy. It's a woman, it's gold, and it's proportionate to his tiny hands. It's basically Trump's ideal mate. And here's the problem. Here's the problem here. It increasingly seems like if Donald Trump loses, we are not going to get the concession speech that the country badly needs, because he is medically incapable of accepting that he is a loser. So we need to find a way for him to give a concession speech while he's still able to claim that he won something. And I think I might have the answer here, because I have a proposition for Donald Trump. Let's bet on the outcome of this election. I will take the side that you win. You take the side that you lose. That way, if you lose, you still win. And as for the stakes of the bet, I have something I know that you want. She's so small. She's so shiny. You don't even have to take her furniture shopping. Take the bet, Donald. Take the... For now, tonight, let's move on to President Trump. Two words that clearly don't belong together, but that we're all somehow getting used to hearing out loud, like Instagram celebrity or Ansel Elgort. Now, you may remember back in May, Trump suggested on Twitter that he may have tapes of his conversations with deposed FBI director and Slenderman alter ego, James Comey. Well, on Thursday, Trump finally admitted that he had no such tapes and offered up this rationale for his claim.
Well, I didn't tape him. You never know what's happening when you see that the Obama administration, and perhaps longer than that, was doing all of this unmasking and surveillance, and you read all about it, and I've been reading about it for the last couple of months about the seriousness of and horrible situation with surveillance all over the place, and you've been hearing the word unmasking, a word you probably never heard before. So you never know what's out there, but I didn't tape, and I don't have any tape, and I didn't tape.
What was that? Whenever Trump talks, it's like a cross between a lottery machine that spits out words and a speak and spell that just fell into a toilet. But he wasn't done, because Trump had not yet explained the strategic brilliance of how his tweet influenced James Comey. And just wait for the reporter's follow-up at the end.
When he found out that that there may be tapes out there, whether it's governmental tapes or anything else, and who knows, I think his story may have changed. I mean, you'll have to take a look at that, because then he has to tell what actually took place at the events. And my story didn't change. My story was always a straight story. My story was always the truth. But you'll have to determine for yourself whether or not his story changed. But I did not tape.
It was a smart way to make sure he stayed honest in those hearings.
Well, it wasn't very stupid, I can tell you that.
Wow. It wasn't very stupid. Let's break down what just happened there. First, world-class reporting, Fox News. You really held his feet to the fire there. Second, he seemed justifiably taken off guard by that compliment. And third, think about what he just said. He didn't just casually admit to misleading the American public. He also implied that doing so may have swayed Comey's testimony, which, if that was his intent, could constitute witness tampering. And on top of all that, he then implied he made Comey tell the truth about their conversations, seemingly verifying Comey's account, which is incredibly damaging to the president. So, yeah, Trump might actually be right. It wasn't very stupid. It was extraordinarily stupid. Begin this evening, just a quick word regarding last night's attacks in London, where 7 people were killed and multiple people were injured. Obviously, our thoughts go out to everyone affected, but as a British person living in America, I feel compelled to address a certain theme that emerged through American coverage of this tragedy.
The UK is reeling this morning from yet another terrorist attack.
A city reeling from a terror attack.
The UK under siege, essentially.
London is under siege.
This is a country and a city that feels in some ways, David, under siege.
OK, here's the thing. For the record, in no way is Britain under siege. Is it upset? Yes. Is it pissed off? Oh, you fucking bet it's pissed off. But to say it's under siege and that its people are reeling is to imply that it's somehow weak enough to be brought to its knees by 3 monumental arseholes. And that, as an idea, is insulting. In fact, British people were so irritated by headlines about Britain reeling, like this one in the New York Times, they took to Twitter this morning using the hashtag #ThingsThatLeaveBritainReeling to show things that, unlike terrorists, actually do have the ability to rock them to their very core, like accidental eye contact on the tube or in a lift, and when people make tea in the microwave, accompanied with a gif of a monkey screaming. Honestly, it was an uplifting demonstration of quintessentially British defiance, because the British people are never going to let terror change their way of life. And if you need proof of this, just look at this footage of people being evacuated from the scene. You see that one guy there? He refused to leave his pint of beer behind. That is a one-man walking, keep calm and carry on poster. But perhaps my favourite reaction of all came from this man, who was in a restaurant and witnessed the attacks firsthand. He actually went back to that restaurant this morning to try and pay his bill and tip the staff. And when a reporter asked whether he was worried about his safety, this was his incredible response.
We're not going to let these people win. And I keep saying, if me having a gin and tonic with my friends, flirting with handsome men, hanging out with brilliant women is what offends these people so much, I'm going to do it more, not less, because that's what makes London so great.
Yeah, it is. Fuck yes, it is. And I sincerely hope that that guy is out on the town tonight, pounding down gin and tonics and flirting with every man he sees. To you, sir, I say this. Cheers. Cheers to you. But for now,